Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at one of my mini Phalaenopsis orchid that's potted in the semi-hydroponic setup, and also share with you the kind of problem that it had and what I did to help correct it and the recent development that this orchid has. And to tell a better story, I need to go back to summer 2018 to show you some of the photos I took then to help you understand why I think this orchid was having problem. So beginning of August, I began to notice that some leaves at the bottom were wrinkly. But this orchid had pretty good area roots, and the fact that it was potted in semi-hydro, it was pretty moist all the time. Except when there was no water at the bottom of the reservoir, that it would have a couple of days of completely dry condition. Otherwise, for the most part, it should be in a very moist container. And the reason I think that this orchid could have some root issue inside the media, simply because, you know what, I have been giving this orchid water, so there's no reason that this orchid should have any signs of dehydration if the roots were perfectly okay. So I decided that I had to repot, or at least take this one out of the container, take it out of the media to have it to get an idea of what's going on inside the media. But before I did that, I actually took a closer look, and I realized that one of the roots that had grown into the reservoir after I repotted this orchid into semi-hydro also rotted. So that was the time that I became almost certain that this orchid was suffering from root loss or root rot in the media. And thinking back, I think I was doing some experiment with this orchid with higher dosage of orchid fertilizer. Typically I use only quarter strength fertilizer, but I think at the time I was using 50%, and I might have added a little bit too much of other supplemental nutrients that I think might have led to this root rot problem, because this orchid had always been receiving pretty weak fertilizer, but all of a sudden I was increasing the amount. I didn't do a gradual increase, so that might have had something to do with it. But you know what? This is a no ID mini Phalaenopsis orchid, so it was very okay. I felt very comfortable doing experiments with it, so please don't worry for me or for this orchid. For our learning, I think their sacrifice is always much appreciated. So sure enough, as you can see, it was indeed rotting its roots in the media. I went ahead and trimmed off the dead roots, the mushy roots, and this is what left. And obviously, before I potted this one back into new media, I also used alcohol and hydrogen peroxide to disinfect, and then I let it dry out for about 24 hours before I do more repotting. And the reason I like to have these orchids, being bare root in the air for 24 hours is that gives me an opportunity, an additional chance to further inspect roots that may further decay after I trim and spray with alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. And speaking of alcohol, I used to use 50% concentration, and now I have come across 70%, so I went ahead and purchased the 70% alcohol. And one of my Chinese subscribers said that 70% alcohol is more of a hospital grade and it's more efficient in disinfecting and killing germs. However, based on my research online, if it's correct, if it's more than 70% concentration, its ability to kill off germs actually decreases. So either way, I think 70%, if you can get a hold of it, perfect. If not, I think 50% alcohol is good enough, because I've been using it for quite some time and it seems to have worked really well too. Anyway, back to this orchid. After I did all that, waited for 24 hours, I potted it back into the media. And what I normally do is that I don't water this kind of orchid for 2 weeks. And the reason is because this orchid was receiving water when I was, cleaning roots, and the media, right? I had to prepare the media, so the media was rinsed and boiled, that kind of thing. So it's pretty moist, and so it definitely can stand no water for another 2 weeks. And this is really a time for this orchid to gradually adapt without having to deal with too much excess moisture or water in the container. So usually after they're repotted, I give them 2 weeks. I just leave them alone for 2 weeks. And also, because it's in semi-hydro, and I like to reduce direct sunlight to avoid algae formation, so I use an outer cup that's not transparent. And good news, come in September, this orchid was giving me a new leaf. It was very encouraging, because that means that whatever I did to this orchid was very timely, and all I did was correct to help this orchid to rebound or bounce back that quickly. And you can also tell that the bottom leaves were plumping up. The wrinkly leaf the wrinkle was dissipating, so that was very, very good sign. And here you can also see that the new roots are trying to grow into the media, so that really is another affirmation or confirmation that this orchid is now on the right track to full recovery. And because this is a mini orchid, I use 12-ounce cups for this one. And here is end of 2018, so 4 months after it had problem, it started to give me a spike, and the two biggest leaves on top are new leaves, and they are looking pretty good, much bigger than the older leaves, so it's definitely a good sign. And you can see here too, new roots are growing so long, so deep into the media that it is now in the reservoir. And to me, this is the best that can happen to a semi-hydro setup for Phalaenopsis orchid, or for any type of orchid, as a matter of fact, because this to me is what I call the autopilot mode. And why I said it's autopilot, because the new roots, the water roots that have grown into the reservoir on its own, are used to high moisture, high water condition, that unless this orchid outgrow this container or there is any root problem, because it's inorganic media that does not break down over time compared to barks or sphagnum moss, that I really don't need to repot or uppot it. So to me, this is autopilot, because it's almost like set it and forget it type of thing. Of course, I still need to give it fertilizer and proper flush once a month, but for the most part, I think this orchid is just gonna be fine. Which then also reminds me of a question that I have received a few times from subscribers, asking whether they should, or whether I think it's a good idea to place a layer of sphagnum moss on top of inorganic media, especially in semi-hydro, just to keep the top layer without drying up too fast. And my answer is no, because the beauty of using inorganic media is that you don't need to repot unless root problem or unless the orchid is outgrowing the container. So having organic media on top or in between just means that you still have to somehow, change the media to avoid root loss problems in a couple years, maybe 2-3 years. So to me, I don't think that's a good approach. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!